Today is World Bipolar Day. It's used to raise awareness and decrease stigma associated with the disorder. The condition causes people to have severe mood swings from deep depression to hypomania. Let's discuss this then with Houghton House Psychologist Sanam Naran. Thank you so much for joining me, Sanam. Just for ease of reference and for ordinary people to understand, when we say bipolar, in society, when people speak colloquially, they will say you've got mental issues. In fact, some would go to use more derogatory terms, but it's important to be specific in terms of mental illness when we talk about mental illness. What is bipolar disorder and how does it fit in within the variety of mental illnesses?
So, Tulasizwe, bipolar disorder is probably one of the mental illnesses that has been around for the longest time, as well as depression and anxiety. But what bipolar disorder is basically a disorder of the brain. So it's a very physical, biochemical disorder that affects your mood specifically, and in turn that affects your behavior. So just in a nutshell, bipolar disorder is a mental illness, a mental disorder of the brain.
How prevalent is it in South African society?
Sorry, please repeat your question.
I was saying, how prevalent is this condition among South Africans?
So the statistics say that 3 to 4% of South Africans have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But it is important to realize that it is only 3 to 4% of the population in South Africa that has gone to get help, that has been diagnosed. So there's obviously a larger percentage of the population that lives with bipolar disorder. It's just that 3 to 4% have actually gone to seek help. So bipolar disorder is quite common. It's quite a common mental illness, a mental disorder. And it can be categorized with other mood disorders such as depression and anxiety.
And are there any specific factors that predispose one to having bipolar disorder, or is it genetic? What do we know about what leads to this condition?
So, research into mental illness is, I wouldn't say it's very comprehensive, and a lot of people struggle to find what is the actual cause of a mental illness. But I can definitely say that a lot of bipolar disorder and other mental disorders as well is hereditary. So if anyone in your family or your family members have been diagnosed with an illness, your predisposition is higher than someone who doesn't have a family member with bipolar disorder. There are other factors that play a part. So it is hereditary, as well as environmental factors. So, if you've experienced significant trauma in your life, you are predisposed to getting bipolar disorder. But this is with other mental illnesses as well. Substance abuse has been shown to trigger bipolar disorder. So if you have a predisposition, so if you've had it in your family and then you use substances, your chances of the onset of bipolar disorder is much higher.
So Sanam, I'd like us to talk about, living with this condition, not only in terms of the person who has the condition, but, in terms of the family and society, broader society. What are some of the signs to look out for and how to approach this and basically seek help? Is help available even?
I think that's an interesting question, to Lasizwe, but basically, the warning signs of bipolar disorder is someone that would be experiencing very high highs and very low lows. So it's not something that, for example, today I'm sad and tomorrow I'm quite happy. That's not bipolar disorder. What happens is you will experience an episode of mania. So what that means is you'll experience elevated mood where you're very happy, your thoughts are fast, and your speech is really, really fast. And this lasts for about a period of a week to 2 weeks. Thereafter, you'll experience a dip in your mood. So that's when you'll experience the depression. So this is where you feel sad for most days, where you don't find joy in the things that you used to enjoy. Your appetite either gets, quite suppressed or quite high as well. You'll have problems with sleep. You might sleep too much, or you might sleep too little. So these are some of the warning signs. But how I like to differentiate between bipolar disorder and depression is that with bipolar disorder, there's this elevated mood. So in that period is where we see the patient sort of making very impulsive decisions, like spending a lot, or participating in sexually risk behavior, maybe gambling, maybe going on shopping sprees. And so this is the warning sign that someone is, experiencing bipolar disorder. It's so important that the family and loved ones are part of this process because, in South Africa, there is a huge stigma around mental illness. But as we think of diabetes or a heart condition, we need to think the same way about bipolar disorder. Right. It is an illness. It's a physical, biological illness. And so once we can get through the stigma, people can then seek help and feel comfortable to seek help. And I think what's also so important is that the family is part of this process, because it's really difficult on the individual that has been diagnosed. It's also difficult on the family. But once they seek help, that's when things start to get better. And, just to answer your second question, is help accessible? And that's a really difficult one, because yes and no. In the more underprivileged communities, it might be harder to access some of these resources. But there are community clinics, there are psychologists that offer pro bono sessions. There are government hospitals that, you can access a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Right. And there are a lot of support groups in South Africa.
All right, Sanam, thank you so much for that comprehensive outline there, giving us a sense really of this condition, bipolar disorder, on World Bipolar Day. And sometimes it's just important to have the basic ABCs, right, of what do you do when you suspect that you might have a condition such as this one. Mental illness has become ever more important for us to focus on as a nation.